You have to be the one who teaches them that life is not about work. Life is about having sunshine in your freaking soul. Life is about joy. Because if you're just here to work and die, then what the hell?
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. I am so glad you're here. This week on the podcast, I have a beautiful guest, Karaleigh Garrison, who is a singer-songwriter, a motivational speaker, host of the Seeking Sunshine podcast, and a mom to 3 special needs children who, in such a beautiful way, reminds us that number one, no matter what your life is, you can always find the sunshine. You can always make space for joy and play and pleasure, and those are going to be the way in which you survive the hard things in life. And that becoming a mom, even when you have kids who have high demanding needs, you should not have to throw out your dream. You should stay connected to the things that light you up, because you should be able to have both a thriving family and a career life that lights you on fire. So you are not going to want to miss this episode. Tune in. If you are a mama with kiddos with special needs, particularly ASD, we talk a lot about the early warning signs and how they got their diagnoses and, what steps she took and how hard that was just to normalize, what it's like to be a mama to children who are going through this life experience. We also talk about her partner becoming disabled and how not having him being high functioning really rocked their marriage, and how they've been able to stick it out 15 years later. And we talk about how do you know what lights your soul on fire if you have been disconnected from it, and so much more. So I hope you love this conversation as much as I do, and I hope that it inspires you to feel a little less alone and to go out and do the damn thing. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod, where we normalize normal and find freedom through a life unperfected. What is up, mamas? I am Brooke Jean, your host of the Unperfected Pod, and I am so excited because this week I have the fabulous Miss Karaleigh Garrison. I keep wanting to say Harrison. I don't know why that is, but Miss Karaleigh Garrison is here with us today, and we are just going to have a honest and raw and beautiful conversation about mamahood, following your dreams, finding sunshine through the hard stuff. But let me just formally introduce her and read her bio so you all know who we're dealing with here today. Karaleigh Garrison is a motivational speaker, singer, songwriter, and host of the Seeking Sunshine podcast. I love the Seeking Sunshine brand, all of it. Okay. She has 3 special needs children and a decade of experience overcoming unfathomable obstacles, thriving in chaos, and pursuing her passions when the world deemed it impossible. Her debut album, also called Seeking Sunshine, was released in May of 2023 and is a testament to how important that motto is in her life. Anything is possible when you retrain your brain to seek sunshine. Girl, we talk so much on this podcast about mental health and reprogramming your brain and retraining your brain and neuroplasticity and all this. So we have a lot to talk about. But first, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. You're so welcome.
Okay, so let's just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the children and how many you have and all that good stuff, okay?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to me. I was just talking to my husband last night. I was like, we always try to like label ourselves and stick ourselves in boxes. And I'm like, I'm done with that. Like, I'm just Karaleigh. There's so much of me, and I'm so tired of trying to put myself in a box. So I am big and loud and outgoing, and I also have 3 special needs kids. And that's kind of hard to put together because a lot of times it feels like, oh, now I'm supposed to just be a mom and that's it, right? And that's never like was what I wanted to, like I always wanted to be a mom, but I also have a whole lot of other passions, right? I've always wanted to be a singer. I've always wanted to be, you know, the sparkly princess on the middle of the stage. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you have 3 kids that take up all of your time and more than all of your energy.
Yeah, so were you an artist and a creative before you became a mom?
Yeah, I mean, I became a mom really young, so, but yeah.
How old were you when you had your first baby?
Well, let's back up a hair before that. So I went to college at 18. I met and married my husband in 7 weeks in my first semester of college.
No, you didn't. No, you did not,
Yeah,
girl.
I did. I was 18 and a half.
Where did you go to college?
I went to BYU, so I mean, there's a little bit of a cliche there. Went to BYU.
Okay, I get it.
And met my husband in a month after I got to BYU, and that was the beginning of October. We got married at the end of November. And
wow.
Yeah, I just knew, just like the moment we met, I just knew. And my parents thought I was losing my mind, and they lost their minds. And that was about, because my mom didn't get married till she was like 35. Okay. And so I was 18 and a half. I was the oldest of 3 kids. Yeah. And then we had our first like 18 months later. So I went like right into motherhood.
Yep.
And then our second is only 14 months younger than our first. And it just was like, bam, like I had my first a month after I turned 20. So motherhood was just there.
It was popping off early. Well, I had my first son. I got pregnant with him in college also, but it was my senior year, but I got pregnant with him in college. I got pregnant at 21. I had him at 22. So we both had our first babies young, but then you had 3 back to back, or what's their age span? I know the first one to 2 had 14 months.
They are, right now they are 13, 12, and 9. So there's a little bit of a gap in between the next ones. And then it's so funny because you're like senior year of college, and I'm like, I don't know what that means because college took me like 12 years to complete because we had my journey. Yeah, I graduated. I actually double majored in college. So I was 18 in 2008. I'm born in 1990. I'm 33. We'll just shove that all out there. And so I met and married my husband in 2008 when I was 18. And my first was born in 2010. My second was born in 2011. And when she was born, she was about 9 months old when we actually left college and we moved out to California where my parents live. And we lived out there for a while. Then I went back to school online. I tried to finish my degree online. And then we moved out to Texas, where my husband's family lived, and we lived out there for a few years. And then we moved back to Utah to finish both of our degrees in person. And we had our youngest in Texas. And so I had 3 kids in 3 different states, Utah, California, and Texas. And my husband became officially disabled in Texas. And so he's been disabled for the last decade. Is actually doing way better now, but for about a decade, he couldn't do much. He would collapse all the time, and I was having to carry him to bed, and he couldn't watch the kids because any amount of stress, whether that was physical or emotional, and he would collapse. And it would be like several days before he could like move again. So now he's doing way better. We kind of took this gigantic leap of faith when we moved back to Utah because we left his parents. We were living, blocks from his parents, and they were constantly having to watch our kids so I could take him back to the ER. And we moved back to Utah.
Can I ask what he suffered with?
Yeah, so he has a whole slew of diagnoses, but he's got something called familial episodic ataxia, and it's this super rare chromosomal defect, basically. He's also got anxiety and depression, and also, I mean, he's self-diagnosed with autism. All three of our kids have autism, so eventually he was like, oh. But he's been diagnosed with ADHD. Also, I mean, there's a whole. He was on 12 different medications at one point, trying to like keep him together, and none of it was working. And yeah, now he's on nothing. He's on medical cannabis and coffee, and he can jog for
Wow.
fun when he feels like it. He's had a job for the last
Wow.
year, and he's been kind of had this miraculous recovery. And we're kind of
Wow. And do we
rebuilding
know
our lives.
why? Do we
He
know what
attribute, yeah,
what started the miraculous recovery?
he attributes it all to God. He'll tell you his story. It's pretty amazing. It started with he was in pain management, and he was on all these really he actually has a spinal stimulator that's implanted in his spine, and because he's got chronic back pain and he's got chronic fatigue, and so he was on pain management. So he was on really heavy pain meds in addition to like all the other things he was on. And pain management out of the blue, like he was going there to get like injections for pain. And what they would do is they would put him under for these injections. And when people get put under, like goodness knows what you say, like people say the craziest things when they get put under, right? So all of a sudden, like he got this letter, and it was like, you said something offensive to somebody at some point and we're kicking you out. And it was like, what? Like they wouldn't tell him what it was. They wouldn't tell him who it was said to, and they wouldn't let him contact them. Like it was just out of the blue. Like it was totally like we had no idea what had happened. We were like, was it when he was under? We have no idea. We were like, how can they do this and not tell us what he said? Because he was like, I have no idea. Like I never intended to say anything hurtful to anybody. Like I don't know. And we still have no idea to this day. But because of that, like we have come to realize that it was maybe God intervening, because that was what triggered him to try medical cannabis, because he had no other options for pain management.
Wow.
And so he started medical cannabis, and within a week he was able to stop, I think, all of his other 12 medications. Like he was
Wow.
able to stop everything, like the
Did he
medical
wean
cannabis.
off those medications, or did he just get off them cold turkey? Because that can be
I
really
can't remember.
painful and
He's
dangerous.
gone cold turkey off of those medications multiple times in his life,
Wow.
because
Wow.
it's been a journey. It's been quite a journey.
It sounds
So
like it has. And it sounds
yeah,
like you were really thrust into not only taking care of your children, but becoming a caregiving partner, which is like a
yeah,
whole
hmm,
other thing. I'm so glad to hear, though, that he found something, the medical cannabis, and that he's
yeah,
functioning and feeling better. But I want to
hmm,
talk about having three kids, right? First of all, young,
yeah,
and second of all, congratulations for finishing your degree. Like,
yeah,
I am all about. I don't care how long it takes. It's like it says something about you that you finish what you started,
yeah.
whether it's this, that, or the other thing. I think that's really cool, because I think, and this is going to be part of our conversation today, a lot of times moms let parenting derail their dreams and derail their goals. And it certainly does affect our ambitions. I mean, becoming a mother
Hmm.
rocks us at every level you can possibly imagine. And you've worked really hard to stay connected to your purpose around creating and singing and songwriting and all that. But I want to talk, before we get to that, about the journey of having three kiddos with ASD. Like, what were the symptoms? How did you figure that out? What was your journey there? Because that, as a mother of two children, that sounds like a really big mental load and physical and energetic load for you to be navigating.
Yeah.
Gosh, in your early 20s, for fuck's sakes? Like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So tell us the story.
Oh, it's such a story, and they're all so different. And I guess I should say, so I have my oldest and youngest
Okay.
are high functioning, but my middle,
Okay.
who's severely autistic and he's kind of semi-verbal, he's also type 1 diabetic.
Oh my goodness. Baby.
We're just about to hit his 5 year.
Mama.
Well, and that story is amazing. So when we're just about to hit his 5-year anniversary, and when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he was completely nonverbal. He didn't have anything, a single sound that meant anything. And we were, as a family, we were like constantly praying that he'd be able to talk, but we'd been through, he was 7 when he was diagnosed, because now he's 12. And we were constantly praying, let his voice, like, we want to hear his voice, we want to hear him talk, and he wasn't making any progress. And then he almost died because he was in diabetic ketoacidosis, which is for anyone who has heard of DKA, and we went through that whole journey, and he started talking right after he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Like, it was this weird, crazy miracle, and now he won't shut up.
Yes.
Like, it was really funny. Like, I was telling his new teacher this year, he's in middle school, which is insane, and I was telling his teacher this story, and he's like, yes, Josh's voice is a miracle, like trying to convince himself, because he only knows the Josh that never ever stops talking.
Right. He doesn't know the journey.
He doesn't know, the Josh that only screamed and never talked. And now, like, Josh doesn't really communicate, which is why I call him like semi-verbal. He only tells you what he wants on repeat, over and over and over, all day long.
That's hard. That's hard.
Which is so much better than the not talking at all. And it's a miracle that I have to remind myself on a daily basis that it's a miracle that he's talking. But now he can say, I love you, Mom. And he can say all these things. When it comes to like conversational stuff, that's not there. It's, 3-word sentences of I want this and I want that. But that has been a wild journey to see him grow and improve. And it wasn't just in his speech, like, we couldn't potty train him, and then he was diagnosed, and then all of a sudden he just potty trained himself. Like, he was severely underweight, and then he was diagnosed, and now he's not. And, like, a lot of things improved in his life and with his quality of life when he was diagnosed with this horrible disease. So,
with the type 1 diabetes or the ASD?
Yeah. No, with the type 1 diabetes. The ASD was pretty obvious right from the get-go. From the very beginning. What were some of the
signs that made you go, what's going on here?
Well, so what was interesting is he and Aurora, my oldest, are 14 months apart. So she was around 2.5, and she didn't really have sentences. She had like a couple words, and at 2.5, you should definitely be having sentences. And so it was like, she should be talking more. Maybe we should get her into speech therapy. And so we went to get her in speech therapy, and something just felt really weird about the speech therapy, place we tried to go to. And I was like, I was really hesitant about sending her there. And then a friend was like, oh, try this early intervention place instead. And so we decided to go that route. And as soon, and I was kind of going, oh, Joshua's 18 months old and he doesn't have any words. Shouldn't he have some words by now? And they were like, yeah, we'll totally see him too. And I had mentioned this all to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician was like, he's a boy, he shouldn't be talking yet anyway. Like, they just take longer, and like completely disregarded all of my concerns about Joshua. And that was really annoying. And so we ended up going with this early intervention company who was happy to see both of my kids. And they took one look at Joshua and they were like, he hasn't met all of these newborn milestones. He doesn't look at you when you talk to him. He doesn't respond to his name. He doesn't do all of these things that he's supposed to be doing that are like newborn, 6-month-old, 1-year-old milestones, and he's 18 months old. And so by the time Aurora was officially diagnosed with autism at 3 years old, which threw me for a huge loop, because she was so social, and she's very high functioning. Like, she's been diagnosed like 4 different times in her life, and they were not always autism diagnoses. Like, she's very high functioning. She's very, like, you'd meet her and you wouldn't even notice unless you like really knew what you were looking for. It's very much she's just kind of an awkward kid. Like, she's very, very high functioning. And so at 3, and I didn't know anything about autism, I'm going, if she has autism, then he definitely does, because he had no words. He didn't have, he was, as he got a little bit older, he was constantly like rearranging my house, always. Like, that toy has to be in front of the front door. You cannot move it. He started therapy, and it was so hard. It was so hard. They would hold him and have me sit on the couch. And that was therapy, because he could not tolerate me sitting on the couch, because he insisted that I be in the kitchen all the time. And if I wasn't in the kitchen, he was screaming like the world was ending. And so therapy just consisted of them holding him while I sat on the couch.
That sounds like it's torture for both of you.
It was awful. It was awful.
Okay.
Yeah, he's outsmarted us on a daily basis. My completely nonverbal, low-functioning kid outsmarted us. He unlocked everything and destroyed everything in sight.
He's curious.
Oh, yeah, and brilliant at unlocking everything. We had this little teeny tiny apartment, and we had put this gate up to block off the kitchen, because of course he'd go in the kitchen and like throw flour everywhere. We put hinges on one side, and the other side had like 2 holes, and we put like a rod down the middle of the 2 holes. And every time we went up to go in the kitchen, because it was too tall, because I'm short, I'm like 5'2". It was too tall for me to climb over, because instead of a baby gate, because none of the normal baby gates would fit, the entry was too big. So I had my brother help me like custom make a baby gate for this weird entry, because I had to keep this kid out of the kitchen. And so we put the rod down the middle of the 2 things. And like 2 days later, I have this on video, thank goodness for Facebook memories, as I watched this like 2-year-old kid walk over and start pulling the thing out of the middle. Like, he just watched us do it twice and just like pulled the stick out like it was nothing. And I'm like, dang!
Work through that.
Yep, destroyed everything. So those 2 officially had diagnoses around 3. My youngest, on the other hand, was an entirely different story, because his brand of autism is very unique.
In what way?
So it's something that most people have never heard of. So autism is a spectrum, right? And it's a really great analogy. Like, they're all different colors. My daughter's is very much a ADHD. Her struggle is executive functioning. She could just read all day long. That's all she wants to do. And she is a brilliant reader. But good luck getting her to do anything else. My son Josh was very classic, low functioning. Yeah, brilliant at undoing locks. Very classic. My youngest, on the other hand, his profile is called PDA, pathological demand avoidance. And it turns out that that is on the autism spectrum. He used to have a diagnosis of ODD, if anyone's heard of oppositional defiance disorder. PDA is sort of an anxiety-based ODD. It is known a lot better in the UK, and it's just starting to come out to the US. And basically what PDA is, or what it has meant to me, is that he is demand avoidant. And I'm just starting to learn more about this. And it's any time a demand or an implied demand or any sort of something that feels demanding, it's a threat. It feels like a threat. It feels like I'm attacking him. He feels attacked and he will shut right down. And so when he was born in 2014, so he's 9, and when he was born, when he was about 1 year old, I could tell that he understood. And so he is a few years younger than Josh. And so he and Josh would stand there, and he was, 1, and Josh was 4, and Josh didn't talk at all. And they would stand at the baby gate in the kitchen, and I would say, okay, go ba-ba-ba. If you want a granola bar, go ba-ba-ba. And Josh would be like, and do like things that he'd been learning, because Josh has been in intensive therapy since 3. So Josh would be like, what can I do? I want it. I want it. Right? And Benjamin would glare at me and lay on the floor and scream. And the problem was,
Oh.
like, I knew, you could just tell that he knew what I was asking him for. He just wasn't going to do it. He
Right.
just was not going to do it. And so we tried this speech therapy in home for like 9 months. And every time for 9 months, he would just scream. He wouldn't do anything that they asked him to do. And it was like, I could not explain how this child who seemed so perfectly functional was the hardest kid I'd ever had to raise. He was so
Yeah.
hard. He was so hard. I couldn't explain it. And everyone just kept telling me he was typical. This kid's normal. Everything's fine. And I was like, you don't understand how hard this kid is. Like, you just can't possibly imagine how hard he is. And like, it went on like that. He wasn't diagnosed until he was like 7.
Oh my
Because it
goodness.
was constant. It was never ending of just like he literally will not do what you tell him to do ever. And I'm talking our punishments would be like, stand here and hold this pencil. That's your big punishment for, punching your brother in the face. Stand here and hold this pencil for 10 seconds. And it would
They
take us 30
couldn't.
minutes and he couldn't do it. Like it was
He just couldn't. Okay.
and it was like I don't know how to explain how a fully functional, completely verbal, like we did the 9 months of in-home speech therapy and he would not talk. Like he was fully capable of it. He just would not talk. And I was like, I don't know how to explain to people that he's actually totally capable. You can just tell. And then we sent him to the autism facility where my other two were getting therapy. And he started talking in 30 days. Could full sentences, the whole works. They got it right out of him. And I was like, what is happening? Like, it took nothing. And he full on could talk. But he's been on a journey. Like, we went through the pandemic when he was in like kinder and first grade. And then second grade, he was suspended from school 10 times in the first 2 months of school for
Oh
violence.
boy, that's hard.
Yeah. And then he was put into a behavior unit and he had no behaviors in the behavior unit because they didn't put any demands on him.
Is that how you guys figured it out, or did you know before that?
He was diagnosed right around the beginning of that.
Okay.
But the problem is that nobody knows what it is. So even though we have this diagnosis, no one's heard of it.
Or how to treat, right?
Or how to
Like how
treat.
to
Yeah.
support,
Just because you know
how
what
to
it is.
support the kiddo and the parents, right? Like this
Yeah.
is like it's a family systemic thing, and like
Yeah.
we don't know what it is. We also don't know what helps, what hurts, what hinders, and for everyone involved. And I just can't. Like, Mama, how did you not lose your damn mind? Or I'm sure you did. I'm sure you lost
Oh,
your
yeah.
mind.
No, it comes in waves.
It comes in
No,
waves.
yeah, right. It
Yeah.
comes in waves. The losing your damn mind comes in waves where you just, and then you're like, okay, I'm back. Right. You just like, I wrote a song called Apathy. Like, that's what you do, right? You write music where I wrote a song called, I ended up changing it to, I ended up not releasing it, but I wrote a song called, what was it called originally? I changed it to You Shake Up My Life. It was about my kids. What was it called originally? I don't know. It was called something worse, and I had to like tone it down because it was about my kids. It's about
You had to like
like you
process
ruined my
your
life,
rage and your
right? Like you
trauma.
process it. Like I wrote a love song to Apathy. It's actually out. That one's on my album. Like I wrote a love song to Apathy. I was like, my kids break all my stuff, and I'm not allowed to get mad at them because they don't understand, and I'm the mom, and I'm just not allowed to get mad about it, and I just can't. And like, so what do? You just suck it up and deal with it. And
Well, it sounds like you moved that emotion through your songwriting, but what has
yeah.
been, because that all sounds like so freaking hard, Carolee. What was the hardest part? Like, what was the part about that that shook you to your core, and how did you overcome that particular?
There's been a lot of moments. Some of the hardest moments have been when my husband was at his worst because when you and your husband are not together dealing with this as a team, that feels like the end of the world. Like that
Yeah.
feels like you just cannot. And those are the moments when you're like, I'm just dying. And it's like, you know, you look back and you're like, how did I get through that? Like, I don't know. I think I'm just so damn stubborn that I just refuse to give up. Like
Well,
that
you're
seems
like
to be
your persistence going back to like you graduating
right.
college 12 years later. You're like, I am like not, you don't give up on
Yeah.
things, girl.
Yeah, I don't.
You
I'm
don't give
I'm
up. You're
real
resilient. You don't
yeah,
give up. So
I
you just put
don't.
one foot in front of the other. Or like, how did you navigate that not having your partner? I mean, I can't imagine how much resentment I might be feeling if I'm alone. First of all, you're outnumbered. It's you and you have 3 children. Your
Yeah.
partners can't help. I mean, I'd lose my mind and I would probably be so deep in resentment that I would like lose my sunshine and spark.
Well, and it wasn't just that he couldn't help. My favorite quotes from Frozen, from, from the kids' movie, from the song, is people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. So, like, we almost got divorced. Like, I mean, because people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. And when you are supposed to be the provider for your family and you already have clinical depression and anxiety and like you can't provide because you keep collapsing, like, and you know, your self esteem is rock bottom, you're not exactly the nicest person to be around.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
I can
there
totally
was,
see that storm. I can see
right?
that storm coming. Yeah.
And so it
Why'd you
just,
stay with him?
because I knew that I needed him and they needed him. They're a lot like him, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that
Mm-hmm.
they needed him. And I knew that this wasn't the man that I married. And I knew that he could be that man again.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he always was trying. Like, as
Okay.
bad as he always was, like, there were, you know, we had like our worst of the worst of the worst. And he realized, like, I screwed up and I'm gonna be better. And he actually tried. Like, it
Okay.
wasn't like unapologetic, I'm gonna live my life. You know, he was never like that. He
Mm-hmm.
was like, no, I'm gonna be better. And when somebody's willing to change and they're willing to improve, it's, I don't know.
It's everything. It goes a long
I,
way. It does, and
yeah,
it
I'm like,
doesn't even have to be like miraculous changes. It's just like acknowledging the problem with me and facing it, and then taking baby steps. Progress is everything because it shows you care. It shows that it's not gaslighting us like we're losing our minds because we're
yeah,
seeing all of these problems. Like going back to what you were saying, it feels like you're on the same team again
yeah,
when we can look at the problem. But I have to say, so many people end up getting divorced without having half the load that you guys had. And so I'm sure there were moments where it was really hard to see that through. But is it in a better place now?
oh yeah, yeah. No, our relationship's better than ever. I think this year will be 15 years. And
Wow.
our
Beautiful.
relationship's never, yeah, it's never been as good as it's been. And like, I think we spent the first decade fighting. Like, now
Yes,
we're like,
fighting. You are literally in a
yeah,
constant trauma response. So let's at least
yeah,
acknowledge that.
yeah. Like, we've matured and grown together so much that I'm so grateful that I stuck it out when it was really hard. Like, so grateful.
Yeah, holding on to that, like what you said, I think is really profound. Like holding on to that nugget of their kind of who their core essence is, like who they really are. Like some might say their soul, some might say their authentic self, whatever you call it. Like you didn't forget who that person was and you kept your eye. And that in some ways, that was a way for you to seek sunshine through all of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Well, and
So, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it helps that we both come from two sets of really stubborn parents who fought their way through marriage and are still fighting it out. So, like, neither of our parents are divorced. They showed us an example of couples that fight and are still together. So, like, of imperfect marriages that can still work and can still be, that can still find happiness even when it's not always happy.
Yeah, and trusting that it ebbs and flows, right? Like I've been with my partner this year will be 19 years and it goes in phases. Like,
Yeah.
and what I think people don't understand is the phases are painfully long. So you can be in a rough patch for a long ass time. And that's when it's easy to give up. But then suddenly things get better. And it's just weird, like how things will begin to open up and shift. And then you remember who each other is. And then you start like having that sparkle in your eye again. And then you start like connecting more intimately again. And then you're like, oh yeah, I still fucking like you. Holy crap. And then you're good for a long time. But I think people are just like not prepared for how lonely and hard some of those low moments in marriage can be. And yeah, you got to keep your eye on that bigger outcome. But what I was going to ask you is, like, in that hard, like, decade, right, of, like, you said, of fighting with your partner is suddenly not well and you're caregiving him, your 3 kiddos are going through all this stuff. How were you seeking sunshine throughout the dog days of parenthood? Let's just call them what they are, right? They're hard. How were you seeking sunshine, and how has that informed the creative that you are and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I'm a maker, and I've always made stuff. And what's funny is, like, I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I did crazy, stupid things. And I would like pour my whole heart and soul into these projects. And I'm like, oh, getting my mind off the crap I was going through and putting it into, like, you know, literally, like, what can I control? Oh, I can, like, physically control this stuff that I'm literally manipulating right now. Like, I'd made Halloween costumes for 9 years in a row. So, like, that literally that whole time.
Did not.
Yeah, no, so I studied.
Like, make fun of that. I'm like, who the hell makes Halloween? You do, and you do it like it brings you joy. Like, everybody, now you know who to call to help you with this. Because I'm always like, who are these amazing people that can do this stuff?
I studied sewing and costume design in college. Like, I double majored in, like, I did a separate sewing degree and a separate costume design degree.
What?
Yeah, because
degree? I didn't even know this. You're just like informing me.
It's like this, like, yeah, it's BYU. So yeah, so okay. I made, like, from scratch. Like, first year was the year my daughter was born, all the way up for 9 years until Joshua was diagnosed with diabetes. Wow. I made us Halloween costumes, and I made homemade Valentine's stuff for my kids to hand out. I made homemade teacher gifts. I had my own business making button jewelry. Like, I made stuff with my hands because that's something that I've always loved to do. And I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I poured my whole heart and soul into these making things because it was something I could do that literally made beauty in my world, and I could get my mind off of all the hard stuff I was going through and, like, actually make something that made me happy, that made beauty and made sunshine. And, like, yeah, it was a project to complete. It was a problem to solve. And yeah, it was usually a problem of my own making that I didn't have to have, but it was something to distract me. It was something that I could accomplish, something I could control, something I could do to get my power back. And when you're feeling powerless in your life, like, that's exactly what you need. You need some way to find the power in your life, and you have it somewhere. Yes. You have it in some way, and when you can, like, execute it, when you can do something about it, like, that's how you change your life. Is you start being powerful.
Oh my gosh, I have the goosebumps over that, Karaleigh, because when I think about you as a precious young mom navigating life, navigating parenthood, navigating finding herself, navigating marriage, like all the things, like, and then 3 kids with special needs, we don't feel like we have control over anything. And that is what our brains and our bodies cannot tolerate. And you found a channel to be able to pour of all that pain and love and beauty into, to be able to say, but I do have control over this, and I can create an outcome here, and I can create beauty here. And that is so therapeutic. And you just knew that intuitively. Like, as a therapist, I would encourage someone who's raising a kiddo with special needs to create, right? To sing, to dance, to cry, to garden, just to move that emotion out of your body. But you just knew, like intuitively, this is a way for me to work through all of these things and to create beauty along the way, to seek that sunshine. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's
It
huge.
really was. And like I'm so passionate about like that as a form of self-care, and I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but it's like when you have something you're passionate about it, like don't let it fall by the wayside. That's if you don't know what to do for self-care, that's what you do. Like don't let it fall by the wayside because that's part of you. Don't let that important part of you disappear.
How would you, because I think we're touching on something really important here, at least so many of the mamas that I know and work with, they forget like who they are and what lit them up, or what, like when I ask them if I could get you 2 hours a day to just play and do something joyful, they look at me like, what the fuck is that? How would you encourage a mama to know what her interest, passions, where her power lies? Like, how did you stay connected to it? Or if you were totally disconnected from it, how do we go about rediscovering that?
What did you do when you were a kid? What was your favorite thing to do when you were 5? Because for me, I wanted to stand, like, what did you want to be when you grew up when you were 5? I wanted to be the pretty princess who stood on the stage and sang. Like, I just wanted to sparkle and glitter. And I was making myself, like, costumes and, like, singing. Like, that was what I wanted to do, was, like, dress up and sing. And so I studied costume design.
You are a songwriter, right?
And now I'm like, I write songs. Like I graduated college in costume design and then immediately started working on learning how to actually write and produce music because I didn't get to do that in college. Which was, there's its own story, because I didn't feel confident enough, and so I only pursued opera, and then that door was closed, and it turned out it was closed because I was never supposed to do opera, because I only pursued opera because I thought I was too fat to do any other kind of music. And so then the moment that it was closed, I mean, after I recovered for a few months, I was like, oh, maybe I can go back to songwriting, which is what I did in middle school, until a bunch of trolls on YouTube told me I was too fat.
Oh my God.
And so go back to what your childhood self wanted, because your childhood self was so pure and so innocent. Like those things that you loved then, try them again, because I bet you still love them. And if not,
that is
like
such powerful advice.
Like explore.
And if not, go ahead, finish your sentence.
I was gonna say just explore. Like explore things. That's one of the things that I learned. Like I'm a maker. I have made pretty much everything under the sun. I have done painting, I've done jewelry making, I've made freaking crayons, I have made everything you could even think of. I have made it. Because I was broke for a decade and wanted to give gifts to all my kids' teachers and to my family who's received so very many homemade gifts from me. Like I've made everything. And so like just try things. If you're not sure, go try some things and like see if it's fun. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like don't try it with the intention of like making something amazing the first time. Nobody makes something amazing the first time. Just do it for the enjoyment. Can you just try to have fun? We feel like as adults we're not allowed to have fun because it's not productive. Because our only value is in producing something that's worth money. Like we gotta like screw that thought because it is so detrimental to our health. Like you get to just have joy and have fun just for the sake of that. So first you have to like allow yourself to just be happy. So that has to be step one, is like, you're allowed to just be happy.
Boom, is all I have to say after that. Mic drop, honey. We learned somewhere along the way that we're not allowed to play and rest and have pleasure and playfulness. And this is why I think we get so disconnected from A, who we are and our most honest expression, but B, from the things that light us up and make us healthy and happy. And then we become mothers and we think there's no time for play, there's no time for joy. And it's like there is always time for what matters most, but you have to prioritize it. And you can, because you deserve it, because it was your birthright to experience joy and love and play and rest and pleasure and all that. And that's sometimes moms need to just hear, like, no, it's okay. You deserve this. Let's go. What did you like to do when you were little? Let's try it again. What do you want to try that you've never tried? Sign up for it. Like, just giving them the permission. But then also, I think people like me and you leading by example and standing in our purpose and creating things that we love for the sake of creation and the process and the journey, and showing that also shows moms, like, it's never too late for you to get back into that thing. But you said something that I can't just skip over.
Could I say one more thing?
Yeah,
sorry, like, just that, like, oh, I'm gonna lose it. Like, oh my gosh, no, I'm totally gonna lose it. Oh no!
Joy, moms lost their joy and play.
It was so good. I know, and now I'm gonna. I'm so sorry. I interrupted you.
Should we just stay here for a minute and let it come back?
It was. Oh my gosh, no.
This is how it is in mom
I'm having a brain fart. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry, girl. This is how I live my life.
I know. I'm thinking 100,000 things in my brain at every single moment.
Okay, if it comes back though, will you please interrupt me and bring it back?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was, you're a better freaking mom when you're happy. That was what it was. It was, you are a better mom. You're a better human being to be around when you let yourself be happy and when you let yourself be fulfilled. And can you just, like, think about that for a whole second? Like, how do you treat your kids when you're burnt out and when you're at your wit's end and when you haven't sat down or peed all day? Like, when you haven't eaten,
asshole.
Right? Like, I'm an asshole too. Like, I am not the person to be around. I am not the person to be around when I have done zero self-care today, when I have not listened to my body, when I have not done any singing or any making or anything fun that I like to do, when I have done nothing for me today. Don't come around me. Man, no one likes that version of me. No, the person who is the good mom, the nice mom, the fun mom that, like, you want to be around when I've been filling my cup all day. And unfortunately, nobody else can fill my cup for me. I have to do it for myself. No one's going to do it for me, and they can't. It's your responsibility to do it for yourself. You have to do that for you because you're the only person who knows what you actually like. And I have to charge my computer.
Yeah.
Sorry. I've been like, I need to plug that in. Okay, it's plugged in now. But you're the only person who can fill your cup. And you can't just give it all away because it's going to be empty. And then you're going to be given from the empty cup, and giving from the empty cup version of you sucks because no one likes that person. And yeah.
Including you.
Yeah. You're a better mom. You're a better friend. You're a better spouse when you are giving from your fullness, when you're giving from your joy. Have you ever, like, done something that just, like, you came home so freaking happy? I, like, went and did karaoke with my friend one night and was out way too late, and I was, like, bouncing off the ceiling. I was so freaking happy, and I was like, how am I not singing every night? Like, how am I not just, like, the star of the show every night? And, like, what had happened was, like, no one had showed up, and I just got to, like, sing 6 songs in a row, and the, like, 2 people that were there were, like, cheering me on, and I was like, I belong here. I just need to be on stage. And I was, like, just on cloud 9, and I was, like, such a great human. For, like, I was just so filled, and it was like, I need to be this person every day, and you can just give yourself that feeling.
Yes. Oh my gosh, girl. Yes, that's how I feel when I go dancing. That's how I feel when I go to live music. The Voice starts tonight, and I brought my daughter
Ooh.
in to get into it with me because I personally get emotional at every audition, especially when I see the moms' reactions when they get chosen. Oh my God, girl. But like, yes, the things that make you feel alive, that bring you back and you come home energized, those are some good signs that you've connected with something that is like a gift of yours or a true passion of yours that you genuinely are filled up by. And we need to do more of those things because you're absolutely right. We are such better moms. And I want my kid to remember, I want my kids to have memories, not just of me stressed and anxious and killing it at work or just having a clean house. I want my kids to remember me being goofy and laughing my ass off and dancing in the kitchen and crying at things that move me because I feel so deeply. And sometimes we need an external motivator to get us to do the internal work. And so when I'm feeling really kind of stuck in work and stuff instead of the pleasure and the play, I remember like, are my kids getting a picture of a working mom or are my kids getting a picture of a playful mom? Because when I look at my top 3 core values, they're purpose, pleasure, and playfulness. And if all they see is my purpose, they're missing out on the part of me that loves pleasure and playfulness. And I really want them to say, this was my mom in a nutshell. She was purpose, pleasure, and playfulness. And where have I demonstrated that today? Where can I be silly and turn on Beyonce during dinner and use my spoon as a microphone? And because it doesn't have to be big things. It can be big things, but it can also be daily in the moment things where you seek that sunshine or connect to the things that make your soul come alive. It doesn't have to be big.
Yes. Well, and what's more, what kind of example are we setting for our kids, especially our daughters? Like, what are we teaching them to be? You know, the entire world is teaching them that they have to work all the time for their value. Like, the whole world, it's all this pressure from everywhere around them. Like, school is like, no, you get 15 minutes to eat lunch. You better hurry up and eat. Don't you socialize. Don't you do anything else. You get your food in so that you can go back to work. Work. That's where all your value lies. Get good grades. Make lots of money. You have to be the one who teaches them that life is not about work. Life is about having sunshine in your freaking soul. Life is about joy, because if you're just here to work and die, then what the hell?
Sad, yeah, right.
Then just go be an ant. like there's nothing there for you.
Like, an animal or an ant as in the family member?
Like the worker bug. Although I bet you they have more joy than we do. I don't know. Like I meant like the bug.
They seek sunshine. I bet you even ants are better at seeking sunshine in their endeavors than us moms are.
We are here.
That's a really important thing.
There is teaching our daughters. I know. Where there's so much joy and so much beauty around us, and the world keeps trying to teach us not to find it. The world keeps trying to teach us that it's, look down at your work all day long. Like, just keep looking down and, look up at the gorgeous sky. Look at the birds that are singing and flying. Like, that should be our example.
Yes, and what people don't realize is when you choose to do that, when you consciously choose to look at the sky and the birds and what I call the beauty and the enoughness of every day, you are literally reprogramming your brain. You're teaching your reticular activating system that beauty is important. So your brain starts pulling beauty images towards you. You're teaching your brain that joy is important. So you get busy looking for more joy. If we're always looking at the problems and the negativity and the things that are not good enough in ourselves and others, we're going to create more of that. If we choose to look at the beauty and the enoughness in ourselves and others, we're going to get busy creating more of that, not only on a brain level from, a neuroplasticity and a subconscious mind, but I believe on an energetic and spiritual level as well. And so I think that's honestly something that I really value in you, Karaleigh, that is so beautiful, is like you have, in just 33 years of life, you have certainly lived through some really muddy, sticky decades where your soul has always been seeking this sunshine. And I'm sure that you've impacted so many people, namely your kids, but others along the way, in being able to do just that. And it's not about toxic positivity, guys. This is about a way to be well. This is a way to stay sane in a world that wants us to be crazy. This is a way to flush your brain and body with some positive feel-good hormones to give yourself a break from the stress and the burnout and the overwhelm. Like, this isn't brushing over shit. We've talked today about the hard things that exist in our lives, in our careers, in our families, with our children. We can literally, with tenacity, put one foot forward in front of the other at that, while also seeking pleasure and joy. And this pleasure and the joy is going to be the vehicle in which we can get to whatever other side we're trying to get to. And I think that you are just such a beautiful example of that in your everyday living. But tell the people, okay? Tell the mothers about your album, your podcast. Where can they go to seek some more sunshine from you, my love?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find everything at KaraleigHgarrison.com, which is KaraleigHgarrison.com. But it's the Seeking Sunshine podcast, which is on all platforms, the Seeking Sunshine album, which is on all platforms. Yeah, and there you go. That's it.
So are you writing songs and singing songs just for yourself, or are you doing it for other people too? Like, where does that play out?
So I write custom songs for people. Yeah, so if you want a custom song, you can go to my website and there's a whole page about custom songs.
That's really cool. That's really beautiful. I love it. So my son, my oldest, he is an artist. He is a jazz saxophone player.
Ooh.
Oh, and major. So he's
awesome.
in the band and he majors in it. And it's just like music and instruments and everything about it is like his gift. And so it's so fun for me as his mom just to hear from other creatives, like how they create and what avenues there are and how those show up in the world, because I don't know all the things. So I always want to know, like, tell me more about what you're doing with the singing and songwriting. You know, that's really cool.
It's fun.
Beautiful.
It's really fun.
Well, listen, Karaleigh, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and vulnerably share your story. I know that you've given so much hope, especially to moms with kids with special needs, because I think all too often we throw out our dreams when we become a mom. We definitely feel like we have to throw out our dreams when we have kiddos that have these more advanced and, God, I don't even know how to say it without being super blunt, just like all-encompassing needs, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to stay connected to who you are and your purpose and your bigger reason why you're here. And so thank you for providing that light that, no, you can be a mother even if you have kiddos that have some demanding needs and still be here for a bigger reason than being a mom. You might have a bigger purpose and you shouldn't have to throw that away because you have this really beautiful and important job. Both can and should exist for you because it's all part of who you are. And so thank you, Karaleigh, for coming and showing that. And I'm sure there's a lot of mamas who are inspired by you staying connected all this time. So, and for the rest of you guys, hopefully you pulled a little nugget that you found helpful in our chit chat today, and you can put it in your back pocket and weave it into your world. If you haven't already, join us in the private Facebook group, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we can continue to talk to Karaleigh about seeking soul shine. And if you guys want to connect with her there, she'll be in there too. But if not, you guys have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Unperfected Pod. I hope this episode helped you feel a little less alone and a little more inspired to be you. If you like what we're doing here, I would so appreciate that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you do, share the episode on Instagram and tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected to enter to win a 1-to-1 laser coaching session. Also, feel free to join me in my private Facebook community, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we continue the conversation. Thanks again for being here, and see you in next week's episode.